Hello everyone, very good morning. So today we'll be starting integration, and the first session on integration will mostly be focused on the fundamentals of it. We will try to cover a couple of theoretical questions. We'll try to see what is the terminology, because the terminology sometimes is a bit confusing. Sometimes we have different name for the same thing and people get confused because of that. So the intention here will be to just clear the terminology and clear the fundamental concept of integration. Why do we need it? And then we will do some practical stuff in it. Our aim is to make sure that everyone in the class is at least comfortable with the basics of REST integration. But those who want to learn SOAP as well, I'll definitely be sharing a couple of links you can go through, and then we can have discussion on that. But we as a class will try to cover the fundamentals of REST integration in our sessions, and of course along with other questions as well. Okay, so what is integration? Anybody Anybody wants to help me with that?
Connections between two different organization.
Mm,
Connection between two
okay,
different systems, combining with two systems.
okay, right. So when we need to maintain a connection between two different systems, which are completely independent of each other, and they work differently, they have different types of different ways of dealing with the data. Whenever we'll have to create a connection between two systems which are independent of each other, then we create a API integration between these two systems. Okay, so let's say if I have a system called Salesforce, let's say this is Salesforce, and this is, let's say, is SAP. Now, we have two systems. Salesforce is a different system where we do all our sales cloud work. We create codes and submit that codes and everything to the customers, and then orders get created in Salesforce. Whereas SAP is a financial system where the actual sale of that product happens. SAP is the system which will charge customer. SAP is the system where customers will pay and everything. Okay. But in order to efficiently manage our sales process, it is very essential that we integrate Salesforce and SAP, because once an order gets created in Salesforce, that order should be passed to SAP for the payment part, right? Now, payment part we are not doing in Salesforce. That is something we are doing in SAP. So we need to maintain a connection between Salesforce and SAP, so that every time we create order gets created for a customer, we send that order information to SAP system. Okay, and once customer pay and everything is done, then we will send data from SAP to Salesforce, telling Salesforce that order has been processed successfully. And in that case, we will change the status of order in Salesforce. Okay, so to do something like this, we need to create an API connection between Salesforce and SAP. So API integration is nothing but integrating two different independent systems for some common data or for some common processes. And once we make the API integrations, then we can move the data from one system to the other and from other system to the one system. If data is floating from one system to the other and from other system to the first system, then that is called bidirectional integration. If data is just floating from Salesforce to SAP and SAP is not sending any data to Salesforce, that is just a one-way integration. Okay. So here, don't worry about this example. Main aim is to explain you what is integration. Okay. Now, in any integration, why we are kind of worried about integration is because it always involves a different system, a system which we are not familiar with. And whenever we walk in an unfamiliar territory, obviously it is very common that we will be bit uncomfortable because we do not know how that system work and how the processes work. We are not aware about the functionalities there. We are not aware about how orders get created in SAP. So obviously, as a Salesforce developer, we will be bit frightened to connect Salesforce with SAP, and that's why most of the junior developers feel uncomfortable whenever they hear this term SAP, or whenever they hear this term integration. Okay, so you as a Salesforce developer need not to be worried about how SAP is going to do that. Your role as a Salesforce developer is, let's say if Salesforce is doing call out, then you should be focusing only on call out. If something is going wrong on the SAP end, it is the responsibility of SAP to inform you that they are getting error and these are the reasons of that error, so that you can rectify those errors if those errors are something because of you. Okay, so we as a Salesforce developer need not to be worried about what is going wrong in the third party system. Okay, unless they come to us and say that, okay, this is wrong, we do not accept data in this format, and then you'll have to correct that data or correct the formatting of it or whatever the reason could be. Okay, so first thing as a Salesforce developer is that you need not to be worried about the third party system. All you need to be worried about is how you will be able to make the connection. In any integration, it is very important to understand the trigger point. At what point you will be sending data to us. Let's say in this case, in this example which we have discussed here, Salesforce is sending data to SAP, order related data. But when Salesforce will send that data, when let's say order gets created. So in that case, there will be a trigger on order object. The moment order gets created, we will do a call out via future method to SAP. So the order object creation will be the trigger point. In any integration, it is very important to identify the trigger point. Okay, trigger point is very important for any integration. So you will work on identifying the trigger point. Okay, trigger point is very important. The moment you want, let's say you have a trigger point as a button. Okay, your customer wants to have a button on order object. Okay, let's say once order gets created, they want to click on, there is a button called send data to SAP. Now when you click on that button, then that data will be forwarded to the SAP system. You don't want that data to be forwarded automatically. You want that data to be verified first by you if that data is correct or not, and then on click of that button you want to send that data. Then in that case the trigger point will be that button. On click of that button, you are sending data to SAP system. So in that case, trigger point will be order. So in no matter which integration you are working on, whenever you will work on integration, your first question will be what kind of integrations we are going to use, whether it will be SOAP, whether it will be REST, whether it will be public subscribe model, whether it will be via platform integration. And then you will be asking what will be the trigger point, like when do we need to send data? On what criteria do we need to send data? Do we need to send all orders, or do we need to send only the activated orders? Do we need to send order which have, let's say, a certain value, or we need to send all kind of orders? So those trigger point related questions becomes really critical in any integration. Okay, now this is the basic requirement. Why do we need integration? We hear this term a lot: outbound integration, inbound integration, call outs, web services. There are different terminologies for it. Okay, so let's try to understand them one by one. Okay, let me remove this. There are two things. One is one is called outbound, and sometimes you will hear this term inbound. Okay, outbound. What is outbound integration? Outbound integration is that means we are doing some call outs, like we are doing sending some data. So we call it callouts as well, or let's call it as web services and callout. First, inbound and outbound is kind of understood. So there are two terms. One is web service, and the other one is callout. Okay, now try to understand these two things. Web service is nothing but when we create an API so that any third-party system can call that API and can send us data or get data from us. Whenever we create an API for third-party system so that they can call that API. In our example, we are calling SAP, right? From Salesforce, we are calling SAP. But what does that actually mean is that SAP has created an endpoint for us so that if we call that endpoint and send the order related information, then an order will be created in SAP as well. So in this case, SAP has created an API for us. SAP has created a web service for us so that Salesforce can do a call out. So when we call another system, then that is known as call out. When we expose our API and other system calls that API, then that API is known as that class which creates the API is known as the web service class. So there are two things, web service and callouts. Callouts is when we are calling another system, and web service we create whenever we want any other system to call us, to send us data or to get data from us, that is secondary, but to call us. Okay. So let's say here I'm saying I'm sending data, order related data to SAP, but I will not be able to directly call SAP unless they allow us to call them, unless they provide us their API endpoint, unless they tell us that call this API endpoint, provide these security related things, and then you will be able to pass the order related information to us. Okay, so in order for Salesforce to be able to do callouts, SAP needs to create a web service for us. It could be a standard web service, it could be a custom web service, and we will talk about this later as well. But they have to have a web service for us to be able to call that endpoint. If we are doing callout, we have to set the endpoint. That endpoint is nothing but the API. That is the API endpoint, and that has to be created in the system. It could be a standard endpoint. That means it is already available. We need not to create it. Or it could be a custom API. That means we have created it by writing some code for it, and then other system will be able to call us. So these are the basic things. Sometimes you will hear this term outbound and inbound. Outbound is nothing but doing the call out. Inbound is nothing but we have created a web service class which has created an API, and another system is calling that API. So another system will do, in this case, Salesforce will do a call out and SAP has exposed a web service. So for this SAP system, this will be an inbound call. For Salesforce, this is an outbound call. Okay. Any doubt in this, guys?
So Mohit, whenever we are taking inside the Salesforce, that is outbound, right?
Whenever we are taking something from other system in Salesforce, then other system is doing call out to Salesforce and we are exposing something. Then for Salesforce, it will be inbound. For Salesforce, it will only be outbound when we are calling another API. So in that case, whenever you will have to define which is inbound, which is outbound, you see whatever endpoint is we are calling or we are exposing, that endpoint is a Salesforce endpoint or a SAP endpoint. If that is an SAP endpoint, then we are calling that endpoint to get data or to send data. That is possible. Like sending data and getting data is possible in both inbound and outbound. But we'll have to understand the endpoint which is given there in that particular class is a Salesforce endpoint or an SAP endpoint. And then if we have to do callouts, then we'll obviously have to write the HTTP classes. If we will have to expose our API, then we will write a web service class. And we will see that in next step how to write a web service class. Okay. So for that case, it will be outbound for Salesforce. Okay, we will be doing the call out. We will not be, it will be outbound for us. It will be inbound when we have exposed our API and third party system is calling that API, and we will be writing the code for it right after this. So don't worry about it. We will write the code. Now, practically what we will do, let me also explain that. We have two Salesforce org, right? Uh, we have two Salesforce org and we will use both Salesforce org. So we will be connecting two Salesforce org so that you will be able to understand both call out and exposing concepts within Salesforce, how it works. We have two Salesforce org. One is uh, interview pep 2, and we have another Salesforce org which is SM Shivangi. This org we will use to uh, expose the API. So we will create some custom web service class in this org, and this org we will use to do the call out. We will connect these two orgs, and in the SMP Vangi Salesforce org, we will be exposing an API, and in the interview preparation to org, we will be writing the code for call out, and then we will be passing data from one to other. Okay, so that's what is the aim for us to understand this REST integration. But before we move on to the REST integration, I want you guys to be comfortable with the terminology. Okay, and then once we start writing code, you'll be able to understand those things happening in reality. We are only covering the REST integrations. We are not covering SOAP, but I will give you a link to cover SOAP as well if you want to learn, which you should definitely want to, at least from the interview point of view. So let me now share my screen.
Mohit,
Yeah,
this interview preparation to we are doing call out. It means like we are triggering from here, right? To
yep.
get
The
to
point
catch
will
the
be
values from the Shivangi, है ना?
correct, correct.
So we
Whichever,
can write hello, sorry.
go ahead, go ahead.
So we can write call out to I mean to take the values from the another system, right?
We can also send the values as well.
Through the call out.
Yep, why not? We set the
Okay.
body, right? When we set the
Yeah.
body, we send data, right?
Okay.
So
Okay.
see, call out does not mean that we are sending data or we are getting data. Both are possible in call out. Let's say if we have exposed a get API in the SN Shivangi org, that means interview preparation to org will be doing the call out and will get the data from SM Shivangi org. Okay.
Hmm.
But let's say we are exposing a post API. In that case, interview preparation to org will be sending us some data, and that data can be created in SM Shivangi org as well. Let's say we want to create a case in SM Shivangi, we will say the case related information we will send via interview prep to. And because we have exposed a post API, this will be able to accept the data, and then based on that accepted data, we will be able to create the case here itself in the SM Shivangi org. So call out does not necessarily mean that we are just sending data or we are just getting the data. Both are possible depending on which method we have exposed and what is the annotation in it. Is it a get method or a post method or a put or a patch method? Okay. So it is not only about sending data or getting data. That is possible in both the case. But yes, your point was clear is that the trigger point will be in the interview preparation to org. Trigger point will be in this org, not in this org. This org has exposed the API. Let's say we have just created a class which has exposed the API, but that class will not call itself automatically. Someone has to call that class, and then interview prep 2 will call that class because trigger point exists in this org. Okay.
Yeah, Mohit, clear.
Anyone else has anybody has any other doubt? Don't worry.
Yeah,
Don't.
Mohit, I have one.
Mohit,
Yep.
Who wants to take?
so
You should go ahead, Manjunath, first.
Yeah, it is a basic actually.
Mm-hmm.
always I used to see like in the interviews questionnaire, I used to see like what is difference between API and web service. Even though we understand, but how do we explain the differences in these two?
See, API is nothing but the endpoints which will get created as a part of a web service class. Okay, so in the web service, when we create a web service, we will create a class which will have a different method. API is endpoint is nothing but a part of that web service, but web service is a whole class. Okay, so you can say web service is a wrapper, or you can say a container. API is just a inner part of it. When we will create a web service, you will see that what is the API endpoint and what are the different other things available in that web service. So API is just a part of that web service. Okay, but API obviously is a unique identifier based on the API name. You can say the API endpoint. You will be able to access the whole class, and then whichever method you are calling, you will have to provide the annotation for it. So we will see how we create it. Once we create it, you will be able to understand the difference between it. But you can say that API endpoint is the inner set of that outer
Yeah.
wrapper, which is web service. Okay.
So I can summarize this in such a way that API is nothing but like a endpoint which we call the web service. A web service is something what are the feature or function we are exposed to the external system.
Yeah, you can say it like web service is a class which contains all the methods we have exposed, and this also contains what will be the endpoint of it. Endpoint which third party system will be calling. That endpoint is known as the API endpoint, but different methods defined in the web service class basically determines that what that third party system will be able to do with this web service class. Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Yes, Ayushi, go ahead.
Mohit, so call out will always be placed wherever our triggering point is.
Yes, depending on our trigger point, we will be doing call out. If call out is happening on, let's say, creation of a record, then trigger point is nothing but the creation of that record. If call out is happening on click of a button, then that button is the trigger point. So as a developer, we have to ask cross question from the business, because business will always come to us saying that we have to integrate two systems. But you as a developer understand that it is not that you can say static. It's a dynamic process. You will have to ask cross question like, when do we want to send data? Like, first you will have to understand which org will be sending data, which org will be receiving data, or is it a bi-directional thing? So they will firstly saying, okay, orders, we have to pass order data from Salesforce to SAP. Okay, then you can further ask cross question. Mostly whenever the integration happens in a project, this discussion takes place in couple of weeks. It's not just a one day thing. Okay, this discussion will take, they will first tell you the idea about connecting two orgs. You will think about it, then you will come up with your questions. In your question, the first question should be, okay, what is the flow of the integration? Like how the data will flow, where the data will be created, and from that system, how the data will be floated to the other system. Like they say, okay, so our standard process is that we first create opportunities in Salesforce, then opportunity becomes code, and then we send different codes to customer, contract get generated, and then at the end an order will get created. Now, once the order gets created, that order needs to be forwarded to SAP system for the payments. Okay, so you understand that order will first be created in Salesforce, not directly in the SAP. You can even ask cross question, do we get orders directly in SAP as well? If they say yes, in that case, that order information also needed to be floated to Salesforce. So then it can be a bi-directional integration. But first intention will be to understand the flow of the integration. Okay. So as a developer, you will first go through the flow of integration, and then you will try to determine what is the trigger point, whether they want to send the data automatically to SAP system, like whenever an order gets created in Salesforce, send that to SAP. That is automatically. In that case, you can think of doing a call out from a trigger or doing a call out from the flow. If they say, no, we want a button, because we don't want to send all the orders but limited orders. Then you can create a button, and on click of that button you will be calling, let's say, a screen flow or something, which will be doing a call out, whatever it is. That is something which we will figure out later, but first we will understand the where is the trigger point. Okay, and then we will send that data. So from here you will understand that Salesforce need to send the data. So that will be a call out from Salesforce end to SAP. Okay, or we have to understand like what they want from Salesforce system, whether they want Salesforce to do call out or they want to expose something from Salesforce so that SAP can call out. We can also do it this way. Order gets created in Salesforce, okay, and we have stored that order. We have written an web service class which will expose the orders if they want to get the order related information. In that case, SAP will be doing the call outs to get the order. So we have written a web service class which has a get method, and whenever SAP system will call that get method, they will get the order related information. So scenario could be, if Salesforce is sending that data, then that will be a call out from Salesforce. Like Salesforce has a trigger point, and on the click of, let's say, button, we will be sending data. If scenario is like this, SAP system automatically fetches all the orders created in last 24 hours. Then SAP will be doing call out. We will be exposing the order details via a get method. Okay, so it is possible both way, but that is where you'll have to ask cross question from clients, like what do they want? They want Salesforce to send data, or they want SAP to fetch data from Salesforce. If they want SAP to fetch data from Salesforce, then SAP will be doing call out. Trigger point will be in SAP. When SAP want to fetch data, is it periodical? Is it every day? Is it every 1 hour? Is it automatic? Then trigger point is in SAP. They need to worry about when they want to fetch data. For in that case, we as a Salesforce just need to expose that data. So we will create a web service class. We will create a we will create a get method, and then we will create an endpoint. We'll give them endpoint along with other security details. They will be able to do call out whenever they want to do the call out. Okay. System which is exposing API is the system known as, correct. Whichever system is exposing API will create a web service class and will create couple of methods, get method, put method, post method, whichever method they want. And then that endpoint will be given to the other system which is doing the callouts along with the other security details like access token and other things. We will talk about them later. But first, if we are comfortable with the flow of it. Is it clear, guys? Don't worry if you have any doubt. Feel free to speak. This is important, and I want you guys to have full clarity on it. Then only I want to move ahead and write classes. Okay? So don't worry if you have any doubt. This is not something which comes very easy to everybody. So it's okay.
Hi, Mohit.
Yep. Well,
This is Naveen. Uh, so what is a webhook?
what is? Sorry.
Webhook.
Webhook. See, we will talk about webhook later. Webhook is something which we create to, whenever we have somewhere in the middleware in between, we create webhooks, and then we call that webhook instead of calling the endpoints of SAP directly. We will call about webhook later. That is comes in the middleware part. So what happens is that instead of directly calling the SAP system, sometimes we use middlewares in between. That middleware system will get data from you and send data to SAP system. So you are not directly calling the SAP endpoint. Instead, that middleware will give you a webhook where you will send your data, and then that data will be picked by the middleware and will be forwarded to the SAP system. So if there is a middleware in between, then that solves a lot of problem for us. But we will come to middleware later once we are comfortable with the basics of it. Okay.
Yes, sir.
All right. Anyone has any doubt in the basic flow of integration, terminology of it? All right. Let's see a web service class then.
Hello.
Yep. Go ahead.
Yes. So just that if we are sending data, that is outbound, and if we receive the data by call out or by any means, that is inbound, right?
If we are sending data, then
That
obviously
is
that is outbound.
out.
Yep,
Yes.
yep. And if we are receiving data, then that is inbound. Okay, but you understand this point where which I was trying to tell here is that order
Call
gets,
out can be, yes,
yeah,
both.
yeah. So we can expose data and so someone can, get that data and we can do the call outs and can send data as well. Okay. So
Yep.
sending data is possible by both inbound and outbound. Okay. We will expose our data, someone else to do the call out. Then also they'll be able to get data or we have to do the call out and send data. That is also possible. Okay. So it's not, see, sending data or receiving data does not define the call outs or the inbound or outbound thing because that is possible by the both way. This could be confusing for few of you. Note down your doubts and come back to me again if it is confusing. Okay, because I'll entertain everything in this context. Okay, all
Okay.
right, perfect. Let me stop this whiteboard and share my screen now.
So like then callouts can be in both of the systems, right? So like when we are sending data from Salesforce, so as you said, like it will be a callout. So then it will be receiving or something the other system.
Yes,
So
100%. See, Salesforce can send data to SAP, SAP will receive it, and then SAP can also do call out to Salesforce if we have exposed it. That will become a bi-directional sync.
okay.
So let's say we are also sending the order data, but couple of orders do get created in the SAP system directly. But as a Salesforce system, which is the whole source of truth for the orders, we need to have those orders as well in Salesforce. So in that case, we have also exposed a web service which SAP will do a call out to, and then we will get that order related information as well. Okay, so we are doing the call outs as well as we are exposing, and that creates a bi-directional data sync between Salesforce and SAP. Okay, why I'm taking SAP as an example? Because it is widely known and most complex integration you will see with Salesforce will be with SAP. Okay, because it is also as equally complex system as Salesforce and supports a lot of other things. Yep, in real time, most of the integration will be in the bidirectional data. And now most of the integrations will also be via the middleware. Okay, so you need not to worry much in that context. Most of the integrations we do nowadays are middleware, and MuleSoft and other tools are very capable tools when it comes to integration. All you need to do is to create a user for MuleSoft and give them proper permission. They will be able to do everything on your own. Many of my integrations, I have not written a single line of code. Single line of code. All the things were done by the MuleSoft automatically. Automatically. I'm saying I'm not even doing the call out. MuleSoft is fetching data from us, sending that data to the third party system without writing a single line of code. So integrations are very easy nowadays. Okay, all you need to worry about is the flow, how the data, which objects data will be flowing, what fields we need to pass, because those are the fields you need to give permission to that API integration user. Okay, now data mapping becomes more important than the actual call out, and actual call out is just the way to connect those system. What matters for business is what data we are sending, which fields we are sending, what is the format of this field here in Salesforce versus what is the format of that field here in SAP. If they are not in the same format, then who will be doing the mapping part? Like if the particular field is pick list in Salesforce and that particular field is Boolean in SAP system, middleware need to map that pick list field into Boolean in the SAP system. So who will be doing the data mapping part? These are the more important thing than the actual call out, because with the middlewares, you might not even need to write a single line of code sometimes. Okay, so you have created order in Salesforce. Okay, as middleware MuleSoft need to pick that order from your Salesforce system and then need to send that data to SAP automatically. Here, you will not be doing any callouts to tell MuleSoft that you have created an order. So that's kind of advanced automations we have got currently with the MuleSoft, and not only MuleSoft, there are other middlewares as well. We will be talking about middlewares as well, but from the understanding integration point of view, you should know that how it actually works if you'll have to create or connect two systems, or if you'll have to create the direct integration. Okay, so for that, let me see. Let me share my screen and create the. One important question comes here is that outbound messages we send via Salesforce, right? So from Flow, we can send outbound message or not. Earlier, it was not possible that, but now we can send the outbound message from Salesforce flows as well. So you'll send an outbound message from Flow, middleware will be able to get it, and then we'll pass that data to the third-party system. So what you need to do is that you create an order, and on the creation of order, you just send a outbound message. That's it. That outbound message will be received at MuleSoft and they will send that data to the third-party system. I mean, just a one way to do the simple integrations. And whatever I'm telling you about this integration, Salesforce and SAP, this is a real-time integration. I have done it in past, and this was a very complex integration. The mapping itself, the mapping part where I'm telling you which data to send, what they will be receiving, the mapping discussion itself took around 2 months. So you can understand that we were sending the large data set, they were receiving the large data set, and then mapping was also huge. So even just the data mapping discussion took around 2 months to be able to do. And actual integration did not take that much time. Like, it was easy for us, but the discussions took a lot of time. Okay. But now integrations are pretty easy. Let me share my screen. Okay. All right. This is SM Shivangi org, and this org we will be using to expose our API. Okay. And we will be doing call out from our other org. Okay. So let me open the developer console. And you need not to mug all the syntax and everything, because once you do it 2-3 times, you will have an idea about how to do it. Okay. It's not necessary that you should know each and every line of syntax, but what the major things you should know, I'll obviously be telling you what are the major things. So let me create a web service class. Okay. Again, I'm talking about REST API. Can you please explain? Yes, don't worry, Swapnil. Connected app, name, credential, everything will come. I have everything in my plate. Don't worry. There is a sequence on which I want to tell those things. So don't worry, everything will come. All right. We will explain connected app. Don't worry. Perfect. Let's create a web service. Let's name it the same name which we have in the trailhead for this particular module, case manager. Okay. So I am creating a class with name case manager, and the first important thing you need to understand is that you will have to use this annotation, REST resource, and then inside that you will have to use the URL mapping. This is the end. This is what you are creating an endpoint here. Okay. And I will explain you how this is an endpoint cases. And I just want to name it as cases. And this should be a global class because I want other system to be able to access this class. So this should be a global class. Let me save this. And then I'll create a method global static get cases. So I want to expose this web service class, and anybody, any third-party system should be able to get cases from Salesforce if they access this particular method. So this will return a list of cases. And in order to be able to make it available for other systems as a get method, we will have to use an annotation HTTP get. Okay. Just a second, guys. I'm waiting for. I'll have to take this. Okay. So what I was saying is that in order to be able to make a particular method available for other system as a get method, you will have to use the get at the rate HTTP get annotation. This makes a particular method as a get method, and then if they use this, they will be able to get the data from us. Okay. And let's say I want to return list of case list, select ID from case. Let me limit it to 10. As we are doing the demo or anything, it's not necessary to have a proper code. We are just passing a list of case, and then we will return this return case list, and we'll save this. Okay. Now we have created a web service class. In order to be able to create a web service class, you'll have to use the @REST resources, and then this will be the API name of it. Okay, this URL mapping, whatever you provided, this will be the API endpoint along with the base URL. So couple of things you need to add here. This base URL slash services slash epic rest slash cases, that will be the total endpoint you will have to provide to the third-party system, which will be calling this particular web service. Okay, so this is the endpoint. This is the API endpoint right here. This is the complete web service class, which has currently only one get method, but can have other methods as well. But endpoints is this. Okay, now how will, like, let's say if there are multiple method, how will they identify which method they'll have to call, because endpoint is same depending on which annotation we have written. They have to provide if they are calling the get API or if they are using the put API. So depending on what kind of keyword they use, that will determine which method you are calling. If you are using get API, then you are trying to call this particular method to get the list of cases. Let's say there is a post API here as well. Then in that case, they will be sending us some data and we might be creating a record here. So let's say if I write a post API here, HTTP post, and then in that case, we will be writing global static void and create case. And we will talk about the difference between get and post, put and patch, all those things. Don't worry, we will talk about that. So in this case, they will be passing us some data in the post API, because post API call requires you to set the body. Okay. So let's see if they are passing the string subject. They will also be passing, let's say, what are the mandatory field in cases? Filters. Origin. Yes, we are exposing our API, Shruti, and another system will be calling this API. What will be the exact endpoint? I will show you right after this. Okay. So here I will be creating a new case, new case is equal to new case, and whatever value we have got from the system, we will assign it to it. Subject is equal to subject, status is equals to status, and origin is equals to origin, and priority equals to priority. And then we will just insert this case. So now here in this web service method, what we are doing, a third party system will be sending us data, and based on that data, we will be creating a case record in Salesforce. Okay, so we have exposed an API method which will allow third party system to create record in Salesforce. Okay, and other system will do the call out. So for that system, it will be call out. For our system, it will be an inbound call. Okay. Yes, you are right. And let's say the third party system wants to get the case ID. Once the case gets created in Salesforce, they want to get the case ID. So in that case, we can return the case ID as well. New case dot ID, and here we will return the ID. So third-party system will be sending us data. Third-party system will be doing a call out to our system. An inbound call will come in the Salesforce instance. We will create the case record based on the inbound data, we have got from that system. And then in return, we will be giving them the newly created case ID. Okay, they might be needing that case ID to display somewhere or to use it further. Okay, so here first method was HTTP GET method. HTTP GET method is basically used whenever we will have to send some data, or third party system need to get some data from us. It will only work, it will only give you some data. They can only get some data from it. But on the post, they can send us some data which we can use to create record. So whenever they do a post call out, whenever a third party system do a post call out, that means they can create a record in Salesforce. Okay, so if we are exposing a method with HTTP post annotation, that means that we are allowing somebody else to create a record in Salesforce. Obviously, it is a subject to the kind of data they are giving, and if that data is sufficient for us to be able to create a record or not. But if everything is positive, then the intention of HTTP post method is that we are allowing somebody else to be able to do call out to us, and we will create data, and they will be able to create data in Salesforce. That's it. Now, couple of things. Here we have just written the URL mapping. If you directly call this endpoint, will you be able to create case? No, this is not the endpoint. This is just a part of it. So we have to append a couple of things before this to be able to be third party to be able to do the call outs. Okay. Now, how will we construct the endpoint? Yeah, obviously this is necessary to be able to make these method static, because they do not belongs to the instance. You are not creating any instance of case manager class. They will not be creating any instance of the case manager class, right? They'll just be calling this. This will be available for the whole class. So this has to be static. Sorry, I got a call. I have to take that. All right. So let's see how the endpoint will get created now. Okay, see, this is the URL. So you will have to append the URL. Let me open it in the anonymous window. You will have to append this URL, complete URL, and then you will have to append the services. Then you will have to append the Apex, REST, and then you will have to append whatever you have provided in the URL mapping, which is cases. So this will become the end point which you will give to your third party system. This is the endpoint you will have to give to your third party system. And if they hit this endpoint, then only they will be able to reach to this class. Otherwise, they will not be able to reach to this class just by this. Okay, so this is what the endpoint, this is how the endpoint will get created. Now, let us see how the third party system will be calling this endpoint. Okay, so let me open another Salesforce instance and okay, to the right, to the left. Okay, now let me open the other Salesforce instance I have and try to do the call out. This is the SM Shivangi, so I'll be using the interview prep to save this. And from here, let me go to, I can also do this with the Postman or Workbench, but because I want to show you how to do it with the Salesforce, that will clear both of your doubts, right? I have just added two different screens, one on the left, one on the right, nothing fancy here. Let me open the developer console. All right, let's go to the debug log and write the sample HTTP code. Okay. So I just want to do the call out. HTTP is equals to new. And you need not to mug this. I'm again telling you guys, once you will do it couple of times, it will come to you automatically. You just need to understand the basic concept of it. Request, you can call it request. To new HTTP request. And then on the request, you will have to set the endpoint, right? So request, and I will explain this code in the next session, how to do the call out. The similar way we are exposing our API, I will also explain you how to do the call out, okay? With the same example, but just for the demo purpose, I'm showing you right now that if this endpoint is working or not, okay? Set endpoint, this is a method by which we set the endpoint, and then we have to set the method, whether it will be a get method or put method or post method, depending on what we set here. The HTTP protocol will call the these method, and then if it is correct, if it is, let's say I set the post here, and if I try to post here and if I do not set any body, then obviously it will not be able to call this post method. We will get an error. So if everything is fine, then only it will work. Okay. And can you show how we make call out to this? I do not have actually Postman in my system, so I will obviously install it, and then we can show it tomorrow. Okay, that's why I'm doing it from Salesforce, so that it will not create additional confusion in your mind. But if you want, I will obviously come back with the Postman on, and the what was the other one? What was the other one I was talking about?
Workbench.
Yeah, workbench as well. Okay, Prashad is asking how to make sure about authorization and authentication as a specific people. Yes, authentication and authorization we will cover. Don't worry. First, I want you to understand how this web service and callout work. Authorization and authentication is a very important concept here because this is Salesforce system. We need not to be worried much, but the other third-party system will have a different authentication and authorization mechanism. We will go through Auth 2.0 flow, and we will also explore a couple of other authentication and authorization mechanism available. So don't worry. Once we're done with the basics of it, we will cover everything. All right. All right, once we set the method, and we will set the method here as we'll have to just create an instance of response. So this will be HTTP response. It will be http.send. Now let's set the endpoint. The endpoint which we created here, let's set the endpoint here. And we are trying to call the get method, right? No sunset unsupported. I'm sorry.
Sorry, I was saying to the team, they're
Okay.
asking about the workbench. That's it.
Yeah, sure. See, Workbench is a good tool. I have used it a lot. Once you understand the concept, be it a workman or postman, it is like same for you.
But if you see that workbench latest,
Mhm.
we don't see the latest versions. Since Salesforce has officially declared that we're not going to support the workbench, so the latest versions APIs you don't see there. If you see in the workbench, you will see somewhere 49 somewhere, but we are only on version 51.
Hmm.
And that is because they have got D support from the workbench.
Salesforce did not like Workbench from the day one. Liked it. Okay, just a second, guys. There is an electricity issue. I'll have to just use simple screen. You able to see my screen?
No one.
No, right? Yeah, okay. Just a second, guys.
Current gaya chutti class aaj.
Nice. Chutti.
I recollected my childhood days. Current gaya no class, chalo bhago.
सब लोग
निकल जाते हैं फिर।
सही कहा।
Okay, I hope you'll be able to see it now. I think you're only able to see one screen, right? Not the split screen.
Yes, yes. Only developer console.
Okay. Developer console of interview prep org, right?
Yes.
Yes, yes.
Okay, let me make it full screen then. Easier for me. Okay, so what I am trying to do here is I have created the code for the callout class, and then I want to just debug the response. Response dot get message. The problem, however, here will be because we are calling another system. This is not the Salesforce system. This is another system. We have to provide session ID or something else. For that, we'll have to have the authentication. So let's try to see what error do we get here. Okay. Okay, this is get response method or something. Yeah, just a second, we will talk about this later. First, I want to see the error. Yeah, so unauthorized endpoint, we will have to add it in this remote site setting. Okay, first, let's add this to a remote site setting. Always remember, guys, whichever org is doing the call out, the org which is doing the call out has to add that particular endpoint in the remote site setting. The org which is doing the call out has to add the endpoint in the remote site setting. And the org which is exposing the web service has to create a connected app for the other system which will be calling that particular endpoint. So the org which is doing the call out has to add the endpoint in the remote site setting. The org which is exposing the API has to create the connected app for all the orgs which will be calling that or using that exposed web service. Okay, so connected app we will create in the org where we have exposed our API class. Whereas the remote site setting we will create on the org which is doing the call out. Okay. We
Can
have
you
got
iterate
that.
once? Can you come again, please, once?
Yes.
Sir, we can see only one screen, right?
Yeah, I'm not showing multiple screen. Don't worry. I'm showing the same screen which I have shared. What I'm trying to say here is because my interview preparation, this is interview preparation to org. Interview preparation to org is doing a call out to SM Shivangi org. Okay, so the org which is doing the call out, which is interview preparation to here, has to add the endpoint in the remote site setting. Okay, we'll have to tell my Salesforce system that whatever endpoint I am going to call is an authorized endpoint from the system point of view. Okay, so here let me write it down. The org which is
Hello, sir.
doing the call out. Yeah.
Sir, screen is not
Sir, your
visible.
screen is frozen.
Oh,
You are sharing another screen, I think so.
really?
Yes. Now okay.
Okay.
Now it's fine, sir.
So what I did, I was trying to do the call out and it gave me an error. Okay, system dot call out exception. And let me also, we
You're
got,
doing anything, Mohit? We don't see anything. Screen is like
Our screen is stuck.
got
Yes.
it.
your
Same screen is
Because
get
of this,
just
got it.
expanded.
Are you are able to see this screen, right? This one, where we are doing the call out, right?
Yes.
yes.
Right.
When I execute this gives me an error, which says that unauthorized endpoint, please check the endpoint and add it in the remote site setting. Okay. So
Okay.
the org which is doing the call out has to add the endpoint in a remote site settings.
Where are you writing now? We don't see that.
Uh, let me see.
Now we can see.
Are you able to see me typing? The org which is doing the call out
No,
and
no, sir. No, sir.
are you
Not typing. It is like we see like the org which is doing the call out has to add the endpoint
The
in
same
a
screen
remote
is just
settings. That's it.
same
So
screen.
let me explain it verbally instead of writing it. Sorry
Yes.
for this technical error because of the electricity. Okay, so when we do the call out from my interview preparation to org to SM Shivangi org, because we have not added the SM Shivangi org's endpoint in the remote site setting, we got the unauthorized endpoint call out exception error. Okay, so here the point to understand here is whichever org is doing the call out has to add the endpoint of the org of the other org in the remote site setting. Okay, so the org which does the call out, we add remote site setting there, and the org which exposes the web service, has to create the connected app for all the apps or all the third party system who will be able to access the class which we have exposed. So in our case, SM Shivangi org has exposed a web service class, right? Which has two methods, get method and post method. But what are the different third party system will be able to get the access to this particular web service will be defined by the fact that if we have a connected app created for them or not. Okay, so most of the people get confused here is that in which org will I create the connected app versus in which org I will be adding the remote site setting. The org which is doing the call out, the org where you have written this HTTP callout class, HTTP send request, HTTP method, HTTP request response, the org where you have done all these things, in the same org you will have to add the endpoint in the remote site setting. That is clear, guys? And
Well,
Mhm.
go ahead. You complete. I'll ask.
And the org where you have created the web service class, there you will have to create the connected app. Let's say SAP will be doing the callouts to your web service. SAP will not be directly be able to call out unless you create a connected app for them, because from a Salesforce security point of view, you can only allow the kind of allowed apps or allowed third-party system. How you will allow them? By adding them in the connected app. Here, because it is just the Salesforce to Salesforce, you will need not to create the connected app currently. But if you try to access the endpoint, this endpoint, HTTP ASM Shivangi, or you will not be able to do unless you create the connected app for them. And we will create connected app, we will create name credential, we will create everything tomorrow. Don't worry about it for now. The reason I'm telling you is that because people get confused in this, where shall I create remote site setting versus where shall I create connected app? That's the point here. Remote site setting you will create in an org where you will be doing the call out. Connected app you will create in an org where you have exposed your web service or exposed your API or created the web service class. That point is clear, guys. I will explain connected app in detail. Don't worry about it. Just now, just understand where shall we create connected app versus where shall we create the remote site setting. Is it clear, guys?
Yes, sir.
Perfect. Oh, Prasad has written so many interview questions. See, just add these questions in the interview sheet, Prasad, and we will go through that. Okay,
Mohit, one question.
go ahead.
I'm
Go ahead.
really thank you for the doubt which you have clarified now regards to connected app. Since 3 weeks we are struggling to understand that where this connected app should be created. Because there was a use cases where even I was just going through this integration things. Where there is a target system and there is authentication mechanism, and based on where we have to create this connected app.
Yes,
Because usually whenever we practice between the Salesforce. The
right,
connected app will be again within the Salesforce. We will not be able to
right,
get these imaginary things like where the web service is exposed. There we have to create
right.
this connected app.
I
We are
understand.
getting confused because we are everything doing in the Salesforce.
Right. And we will do other call outs as well. See, we will expose our API and we will call that API from other system as well. Don't worry. I am just trying to find out a free API. The problem with integration, teaching integration, is that because we only are limited to call either the unsecured APIs, like the API which does not require any authentication or authorization. And authentication and authorization is the core concept of integration. Without teaching authentication and authorization, if I try to teach the integration, it's like it is very easy then. Otherwise, it is just these 5 lines of code to do call out and 10 lines of code to expose API. But authentication and authorization makes it complex. So
In
I
our
will
case, what
explain.
has happened? Sorry for that.
Yeah, so what I want to do is that I want to cover all the authentication and authorization mechanism related questions and topics and things. Don't worry, we will cover all. If we do integration using MuleSoft, still we need to, yes, one time you need to create connected app for MuleSoft. It is not by default connected. So see, if I show you the connected app, let me see if I can open this org. Guys, let us first see if the call out is working or not. Okay, then cover the questions. And I've got the electricity. Perfect. Perfect timing. 5 more minutes. Let's see if we are able to do call out, and then we will spend time in the questions. Okay. Let me just set up the org.
Sir, have you shared your screen?
Not yet, not yet. I'm just setting it up. I'll be sharing in a minute. Okay. Now, Shivangi. Okay, now let me share my screen, okay? Okay, I am sharing now. Let me know if you're able to see it.
Yes, yes.
Yes.
All right, so this is the org where I'm doing all the callouts. And here I was writing the code. So the org which is doing the call out, we have to define the remote site settings there. And the org which is exposing the API, we have to define or create a connected app there. And not only the remote site setting, the name, credentials, and auth providers also we will be creating in the org where we are doing the call out. But we will talk about this tomorrow, so don't worry about it. Okay. All right. So we will have to go to this org and create the remote site setting. Let's go and create a remote site setting there. So let's add a new remote site setting and call it SM Shivangi org endpoint. What is the endpoint? We get it from here. So even you see here one thing, I'll copy the whole endpoint, whole API endpoint, and we'll put it here and save it. Site setting, okay. And save it. It will only copy the base endpoint. It will not copy the rest of the things, services, Apex REST / cases. It will not save. It will only save the base API. Okay, and that is required here. All right. Now that we have set the endpoint, we try to do the call out and we'll see if we get any error now or not. Okay. So our API call was successful. Okay. And let me get the response as well. Otherwise, we will not be able to see if we got success or error, right? And without knowing if it was successful or not, what's the point? Okay, so let's try to add the response as well. Sorry, let's try to debug the response as well. System.debug response dot get body. Okay. Let us also get the status code. Whenever we do the HTTP callout, we will always get a status code in return. Okay, and depending on the different status code, we will determine if it is a success or error. Okay, so let's get it first and we'll see later. Status code, and we'll save this. Let's call it, this is response. This is status code. And now let's try to execute it. Still error. On which line are we getting this?
Line 6, add plus.
Okay,
This
so
is it.
yeah, got it. Let's execute it now and see if we are getting the success. See, we did not get the successful response. We got the error. It is saying invalid session ID. So what we are doing here, we are calling another system. We are calling another system, and to be able to call another system, we need to have authorization, authentication, proper authentication and authorization. Okay, so for that we create name, credential and OAuth and everything, but for now, just to do this, we will have to add the session ID. Okay, so if we add the session ID here, then also this integration will be fine and we will be able to reach through the other system. So there are different way by which we authorize the other system. Session ID is one of the way. Other way is named credential, like username and password. So there are different mechanisms. We'll be talking about them later on. But for now, to be able to do the successful integration, let's pass the session ID as well. So how do we pass the session ID? Request dot set header, and in the header we write authorization, and here we will pass, see, sometimes you will be passing API key, API token and everything. Here we are passing the session ID. So how do we pass the session ID? We will write bearer and this will be token of it. You will have to get this token from the other org. Okay, so because session ID is, we have to get the session ID of the other org, right? So let's go to other org. This is our other org, and let me open both of them together just to be able to do it on the same screen. This is my SM Shivangi org, okay? On the right hand side, this one is SM Shivangi org. And we are calling this SM Shivangi org from the interview preparation to org. So this org is doing the call out. This org has exposed their API. Now we need to get the endpoint. We need to get the session ID of SM Shivangi org. So how do we get the session ID? We go to the anonymous window and we write system.debug. System.userinfo dot get session ID. Let's see if we are able to do it. We'll get it. Variable does not exist. Okay, that is good. That session ID. Okay, yeah, Salesforce directly does not print the session ID. So let us get it as a string. This is the session ID. We will copy it. We will paste it here in my org2, like in the interview preparation to org, and let's full screen this because that's the only thing I needed from the other org. Now that I have got the session ID as well, now if I try to execute the code, I should ideally get a success response, which should get me the case details. Invalid auth header. I must have done the spelling mistakes or something. Authorization. Yep, you can see we have got the status code 200, which is used to specify that we have got the successful response. And then you can see you have got the case details as well. So that's how you did the call out from your interview preparation to org to the SM Shivangi org. These are the necessary things you needed. You needed to provide the session ID. Now you can see practically it is impossible to do this integration in real time because a developer in the interview preparation to org has to contact a developer from SM Shivangi org and ask for the session ID every time he has to do the call out, which is practically impossible. We want to do integration to automate things, not to increase the manual things. Okay, so to remove this thing and to do these things automatically, we will be using connected app, name credentials, and auth provider. Basically, we will be using auth 2.0 flow to automate this thing. Instead of asking for session ID again and again, we will be creating a connected app which will create a client secret and a client ID, which SM Shivangi org will provide to a developer of interview preparation to org, and then interview preparation to org will create a auth provider and name credential with the help of those client secret and client ID, and will be able to do callouts automatically. That is something which we will do tomorrow in practical to see this thing happen in reality. Okay, so currently from my interview preparation to org, I am just using anonymous window, but tomorrow we will first create a callout class. We have just used the just exposed our API that to only get and post method. We will have to add other methods like put, patch, and the difference between what is the difference between put and patch. And then there is a delete method as well. We have all those things. But I hope this session was helpful to get you started in the integration workspace, because we have done this practically. I hope you guys are able to see which is doing call out, which is exposing, how to do call out, how to expose, how the other system will know that what is exposed. I hope that thing is clear to you now.